Welcome back to the Dual Comm podcast. Epos, I think my scroll wheel on my mouse is starting to go. This is a tragic day. You tell me you've experienced this on mice that you love, where you scroll down and it starts to kind of jump up a little bit, then jump back down. It happens with every mouse that I own. Well, you're on the Logitech stuff, so I don't know. That's like the spin wheel one.
Yeah, I've had it happen a couple times. My worst is I had one of my favorite gaming mice that I took to a LAN party at the LTX convention, and I flew with it, and it got like squished too hard in my suitcase, and so when I came home, the scroll wheel no longer is like completely busted out.
It's tragic. It's absolutely tragic, because scrolling's important.
It is.
How have you been? It's been a month, because the Switch 2 was our last show. Was that a month ago?
Basically.
3 weeks? I don't know.
It's been an exhausting month, dude.
Yeah.
And it's hot now, so yeah.
Yeah, April 3rd was the last time I did this. A lot has changed. The world got tariffed. The Switch 2 was looking like it was going to go up in price. Then it didn't, but then the accessories got $5 more. And then a bunch of great gaming things happened. Like we had Oblivion Remastered released last week, and we had Expedition 33 released last week. So I want to nerd out before we get into some of the topics today, which I'm really pumped on. Like some pretty cool, meaty discussion topics that I sort of think go around the gaming circles quite a bit. Like, do you need to actually finish a game in order to appreciate it? But I want to nerd out about Expedition 33 so far. This, I haven't felt this way in like 20 years, dude. It's so good. 15 years, whatever. I don't care. Like, this is Final Fantasy X levels of good, dude.
Yeah.
Have you played it, seen it, anything?
I have not played it. I've been watching through like the Digital Foundry reviews and stuff, and this feels like everything we've asked for in terms of just like a gamey video game that has all of the gaminess in it. Like, it looks wonderful and it looks beautiful. What are you playing it on?
PC for sure. Yeah, I know the show started with me getting a PS5, talking about loving being on my couch and being off of the desk, and I still do enjoy that, but there's a critical flaw here. As time has become shorter and shorter, I have less time to game. The free time I am getting now that it's spring, I'm going for a bike ride. I'm hitting the trails. And so if I do play the PS5 out on the TV, I don't have a capture card for it. And it's tough because we make videos and you got to have footage to make videos. So I've been back in here, and these Game Pass games have made me get back onto the PC. And I've got a nice solution, because PC gaming, if I'm not playing a competitive like FPS title, I don't want to be at a desk.
Right.
So many of us are at desks all of our life, right? For work or whatever. And it just feels like work to me, no matter what. So I've got a small little 40-inch old TCL TV in here. Like, it's not nice. It doesn't have OLED or anything like that. But I've got the PC running through the Elgato capture card into the TV, and it is really nice. It's like a high-end super console experience. It's still close to the desk, but I can kick my feet up, and playing Oblivion Remastered that way was fantastic. And then, man, Expedition 33 on this system is fantastic. I will say, it defaulted to DLAA. I'm on a 4070 Ti and a 7800 like X3D.
Yep.
And on the DLAA at 4K, it was trying hard to hold 30. And it could, but it was hitchy. But it's the most detailed game I've ever seen in my life on DLAA, dude. It was insane. If you look at the video I posted, like, most of the first hour I played that way. Then I threw on DLSS just to see. And of course, rock solid 60 FPS. It's a little bit softer. Not much. But I'd rather, especially for the combat, I'd rather hold steady 60. I have a feeling this on console might be a performance mess. What did DF find?
I'm seeing a lot of 30 FPS numbers.
Okay.
Especially since the great look, the good looking modes are all the quality mode is 30. It looks like performance mode on the X and at least the PS5 Pro is mostly 60. It seems like it's pretty decently optimized, but like, you want that quality mode, dude. Like,
it's gorgeous.
This has me like, there's some drops. This has me wondering when it's time, because I can justify it for work and capture related reasons. Like, do I start peeking at a PS5 Pro?
No, I think it
because I
would
could play
be,
this on PC, but like it feels like a console game to me, and I kind of want to play it on a console.
Well, you want to play it on a pad for sure, and I do think on a TV, because I am not a huge fan of Unreal Engine 5 games like this, because UE5 games going all the way back to Immortals of Avium or whatever have this crazy overcomplicated, we can display everything kind of look. And so when we were talking about the game a few months ago, it had that ultra busy feel to it.
Yeah.
I will say two things. The art direction is so superb. All of those apprehensions I had disappeared within the first 5 minutes. I love it. It's amazing. It's breathtaking. Walking through the play spaces is just incredible. And the other thing I will say, and we're entering a generation where this is going to be an issue if they keep making games similar to this style, just so busy. YouTube streaming compression is not built to handle this.
Yes.
So when you see it on your TV, when you see it being played without the YouTube compression, it looks pretty incredible. But when you see it through YouTube, it can kind of look mushy, and it just loses some of that detail. And I find it funny because we are going to be entering like the next 5 to 10 years on YouTube where this probably is an issue. Games and fidelity are making this huge jump and leap, whereas we're still over here on some of these old codecs, and YouTube's still trying to make sure it can play a video on a mobile connection with one bar, out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and especially with, Twitch and YouTube streams and videos being such a key part of marketing, I'm curious how that conflict will be resolved, because it's very much like when everyone's trying to sell their games on their graphical fidelity and then it looks like that, it's not very compelling. I want to make a deep cut real quick, and you may not remember this.
Yeah.
Do you remember the trailer for the PS3 Rambo video game?
No, not at all, but I'm going to go Google that right now.
Yes, go Google it, because this was a game that released into the PS3's life. It didn't look amazing. It wasn't breaking any ground. It was not like a graphical powerhouse, but it was a standard of the time PS3 game. But the trailer was so compressed that it looked like an early PS2 game. It looked like there were no textures. The models are not great, so like that didn't help it, but like,
I see. There's like a lot of details in the trees. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
it does look rough.
Yeah. It looks like there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Like, just so low poly that it looks like a PS2 game. And it got absolutely like dunked on at the time, because everyone was just like, why are they releasing a PS2 game in like, I don't remember when it was released, but it was like well into the PS3 life cycle. It had like PS Move capability.
2013. I think. Yeah. That's
like everyone's like, how can you make a game look this bad? And it wasn't like, again, it wasn't amazing, but it was like, it wasn't that bad, but it was YouTube compression at the time. And of course, the compression of whatever they exported their file to stacked with YouTube compression. But like that problem happened then, and it's going to happen a lot more now, because you have so many, like in Expedition 33, you've got so many little particles. You can see like every follicle of hair on someone's face. Like YouTube compression just doesn't play with that. And then it doesn't really sell the experience. And I think in some ways, like that makes it more compelling to just go play the dang game for yourself. Like you get to actually experience it, and it's like a whole new world of, whoa, this is what it looks like. But
and that's so true for everything, because so many of my videos I'll look at, PS3 Shadow of the Colossus kind of looks like a turd in my video, but on the TV it looked really nice, the compression side of things. But the game is made by like 30 people, and they clearly are fans of the genre, and it is one of the best. I'm telling you, this will be my game of the year, dude. I'm like 4 hours in, and I already know like this is probably going to be it if it continues like this.
I am hoping I have a mini vacation of sorts coming up, probably in June. I think I'm going to grab this and hopefully sit down and play it, because it looks like 100% my kind of game. I know a lot of people like weren't sure based on the original reveals and stuff, like if it would be their kind of thing. I think especially if you just kind of go in without over analyzing, like you will be pleasantly surprised. And actually like just be stoked that you're playing something new that's fun. I feel like expectations are so nitty gritty nitpicked these days, and sometimes you just gotta hear like, hey, this game blew me away, and go try it.
Yep. And I've had a lot of comments on the video I posted saying, hey, I've never played a turn-based RPG. I've never played a JRPG. Should I start with this one? And the answer is yes. And my context for this, other than Halo and FPS games, JRPGs were my thing growing up. Like, I loved Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. 10 is my favorite game of all time, Legend of Dragoon. And what basically happened in the late 90s and in the 2000s, we had this explosion of like incredible turn-based JRPGs and RPG games. And those drifted away after we got past like Final Fantasy 10. Things sort of shifted. Final Fantasy 11, an MMO. Final Fantasy 12 was this weird active time combat system where you would build essentially an AI system for your teammates to sort of just auto battle on their own. Final Fantasy 13 was gorgeous, but it also had a pretty dumbed down combat system. 13.2 made it a little bit better. So since 10, we really haven't had a true turn-based Final Fantasy. 14, MMO. 15 went full action, like you just hold the attack button and your dude does backflips and spinnies, and it totally not what the roots were. And then 16 was similar to that. And then obviously the remake and Rebirth, much more action-oriented with a couple turn-based elements in it. And so for a long time, this fan base of people like me have gone, whoa, we miss it. We like this kind of game. And it's been painted pretty broadly that we don't get turn-based anymore, and that's not really true. Look at Persona 5 or Sea of Stars or Octopath Traveler 1 and 2. Like, there have been some. They're just not the flagships.
Yeah.
And so Sandfall Interactive with Expedition 33, they've taken clearly elements from 13 and 10 and Legend of Dragoon and Octopath Traveler and parry systems and the shooting thing from the Persona series, and they've blended it all into this little mix, this cocktail where if this is your first RPG experience, this is going to be insane. It is so good, and it brings back so many of the elements that the big publishers have told this community for a long time, you don't want it, it doesn't sell, and they did it flawlessly. And I kind of hate that like Twitter and gaming internet turned it immediately into like this, I don't know. They're using it to bash on all of the modern RPGs instead of just going, this is super sick. And I understand it, but play the game. That's all I have to say. I think it is so much fun. And it's like all I can think about EPOS. It's been so long since you think all day, you know, when you get home, like, I can't wait to play another session.
That is always such a good feeling. Like being able to be that wrapped up in a game and not because of the hot takes or, you know, those kinds of elements. I've kind of experienced that with, ironically, another turn-based game, Marvel's Midnight Suns, which is a lot more kind of, it's like a turn-based Mass Effect. I've heard it described kind of like Persona 2. And it's one of those things where like you get that right loop and you just want to keep doing it and seeing what more it has to offer. And it's really interesting to see, like you said, us come full circle on the turn-based thing, because growing up, I was that kind of gamer that didn't understand turn-based. I played Pokemon, but I did not play anything else really that had turn-based stuff in it. And I preferred, you know, the God of War and the Bayonetta style game. And if Baldur's Gate 3 came out, and I realized there were other Baldur's Gates, but I did not play them until I was an adult. But like, had Baldur's Gate 3 came out and been so successful when I was like 13, I would have been one of those people that wanted the mod or asked, why couldn't it have just been a real-time RPG? Why has it got to be turn-based? Blah, blah, blah. Even though it's, you know, D&D and that's core to it. But like, as I've gotten older and really come to appreciate the kind of like depth of these systems, that's where a lot of the fun comes from. And so I'm glad we're still getting a balance. I do agree. Flipping it and trying to be like, okay, well, all these newer games are just trash is not helpful. Clearly, they appeal to a lot of people, and I think we can get both. And that has kind of been, I guess, my consistent wish for the games industry when it comes to, you know, we've talked about the God of War reboot and how we've gotten completely away from that style. I mean, we've got DMC5, but like we've mostly gotten away from that style of combat from the old school God of Wars. I think there's room in this bigger than ever gaming industry to have both kinds of players satisfied. And I think the online discourse is very much every game has to appeal to every person or it's bad.
Yes.
I just I think that speaks to the quality of game, because if you are someone who truly just doesn't mesh with turn-based and you look at something like Expedition 33, I think a lot of people that want it to not be turn-based are very, like, they really want to play it because it looks so cool and everyone's having a good time. And when you're not able to have a good time, you're like, well, that sucks. Please include me. But that's also, we've got enough games coming out that everyone can get a little piece of the pie at this point.
People want just good games. And I think we're on this cool crux of a new era. Like, honestly, I think we are entering probably into the good times again, where the AA space, who understand you make games with passion, creativity, and inspiration, not trend chasing, are bucking the system.
Yeah.
They're putting it to the big publishers who have kind of run amok for almost 10 years. It's always been a factor in the industry. Let's face it. The big names are always going to chase the trends. But it got particularly bad the last 8 or 9 years, in my opinion. And you've got game after game after game kind of coming out, punching back at that. Smaller teams with a really good idea, executing on it, and not worried as much about the corporate stuff. And obviously now, like you mentioned, we're going to see a bunch of Baldur's Gate 3 clones in a few years. We're probably going to see some Expedition 33 style clones in a few years. It's not necessarily the point, but do you think we're on like a verge of this AA renaissance?
I do. I think it's kind of almost sad in a way that it's clear AAA is not learning its lessons. And I think, and we'll talk about it more in a couple topics we have coming up, but like it's very clear that AAA is not pivoting very fast or at all. Like they are still, like you said, locking down on trend chasing. But I do think, in a way, that's not the worst thing in the world, because I think the true good creative games come from that AA space. And if we go back a good 15, 20 years, some of our favorite franchises that became AAA games came from those AA studios that got absorbed into AAA publishers because they were making those games. You think about early BioWare. You think about, in a way, Halo. Like, sure, they launched with Microsoft, but Microsoft was the underdog when they launched. Bungie was this indie studio coming off a marathon, just like trying to find anyone to publish their game, bouncing between Apple and Microsoft and whatever. Like, so many of our favorite games kind of came from those smaller studios that then later became big. And so I do think we're probably witnessing the next generation of sorts. And the cloning that you mentioned, like, in a way, that's not a bad thing. Obviously, when, if we see EA and Ubisoft or whatever trying to put out a Baldur's Gate 3 and then immediately shutting down, we're going to be like, okay.
Yeah.
But like I said, if there is room for everyone to get what they want, Baldur's Gate 3 fans are going to be eating good in a few years when those clones come out. Like, they're going to be good ones. They're not all going to be garbage.
You brought something up that gave two ideas. The first, how sick would it be to have like a FromSoft Souls style game in the Baldur's Gate universe?
Yes.
That would be so cool. And I feel like in the PS2 and PS1 era, we had some of those like series where you would get multiple genres, right? From one franchise. You'd have the top-down game, and then Halo, for example, right? Had the Spartan Assault thing along with the FPS games. So you had like a top-down shoot 'em up. There's got to be a better example in there, but that would
even
be
Final
so
Fantasy
sick.
with like Crisis Core.
Yeah, and Dissidia, like the fighting game.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. And then you brought something else up that I thought, you're shocked the AAAs aren't learning. I do agree, but also they haven't been listening to the player base for a long time, so it does sort of make sense to me. FPS games, multiplayer FPS games, are super not learning. It's just all trend chasing right now. That's all I can see. Later in the show, we're going to talk about, you put some notes in about the EA layoffs, and apparently another Titanfall game gets canceled, and the rumor is it's an extraction shooter too. So you've got Marathon chasing Tarkov. You've got Respawn apparently chasing the extraction shooter trend. And I'm so over the multiplayer FPS space, dude. It is so uninspired. They are all chasing their own tail. They're all making the same thing, and then they're wondering why the game dies in like a month and a half and doesn't build an audience. I still hear every freaking week people saying, go play the finals. Go play it. I'm like, I did. I liked it. But it's doing its own thing, and it's sustaining, granted, a smaller than the competitor player base. But I thought that game was going to be dead in 2 months. And there's a community of people who love that style of gameplay because it isn't chasing the trend. It's kind of just doing its own thing over there.
No, I've thoroughly enjoyed the finals because of that. Like, I haven't put a ton of time into it, but like I'll pop in every once in a while, and I'm like, I'm glad this is still here. And I think that's kind of what indicates that a revolution of sorts is coming, because the writing has been on the wall for years. We've been talking about it forever. The AA space is seeing it when the AAA and multiplayer space seemingly doesn't. We've seen how long it takes them to pivot. We've seen the stories, you know, the obligatory example of Concord taking 8 years. They can't, whatever structurally has happened, they cannot pivot fast anymore. And so we're going to see the obvious answer of make fun games that people want to play be in the AA space, especially with accessible tools, as much as we have complaints about it. But like UE5, like it's going to allow the AA devs to just give us games we want.
Yeah.
And if you want to play FIFA or try to get, I mean, the big thing is like, it sucks if you're really like, if you're a multiplayer gamer, like if you're a competitive shooter kind of person, like we were and still are to some degree, like it sucks to look at the space and be like, nothing scratches that itch right now.
Yes. Yeah. It was that for 5 years. And I just hit the point where I'm like, I'm done with this crap. Like, I'm
but
sorry.
There's so much more to play. Like, just take a break.
Yep. I maybe in a few years it will have its renaissance. Right. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you play multiplayer shooters enough, you don't have to worry about like you don't have to play all the time. If you take a good couple years break and wait for the industry to kind of figure itself out, you're still going to be able to get back on the bike again in a couple years. You're not going to lose it.
Yep.
So I recommend everyone take a vacation and enjoy these games while they're coming out, because these are freaking great.
Yeah. We'll talk about Marathon in just a quick second, but speaking of this renaissance right now, can we discuss Game Pass on PC right now? I feel like it is hitting this quiet hot streak. You had in December, I think it was December, Indiana Jones, day one on PC and Xbox. We just had South of Midnight, which was reviewed fairly well. I think like 7 and 8 out of 10. We had the stealth drop of Oblivion Remaster last week, which is a ton of fun. I'm super enjoying that. They did the Ninja Gaiden 2 drop a few months ago.
Yeah.
Expedition 33. And next month, Doom the Dark Ages. Now, I don't have a Series X, so I'm not playing this on console. I'm experiencing it from PC, but it's the main reason I'm back on the PC more. And we've been talking a lot in the centerpiece of discussion is the value of $70 and $80 games, right? As the price of games is going up more and more, Game Pass is feeling a bit more essential, and I feel like they're kind of killing it right now.
Yeah, it's so weird to watch, even in such a short amount of time, that narrative kind of shift, even within just us. Like, we've had conversations even on this, as short of a run as this podcast has been on so long, about, you know, there are concerns with Game Pass of like, we don't own it. We don't get to put it on a shelf. It could be taken away at any time. But at the same time, we don't have to worry about if, you know, there are issues at the launch of the Oblivion Remaster. We didn't pay for it, other than the subscription cost. So like, if it's crap for a week or two, then that's fine. We weren't paying for it yet, so we just get to play it when it is. Like, it's hard to argue with the value, especially if you are someone who has the time and wants to play all the new games like really quickly. And that's obviously a lot of people. I think it's interesting because I am no longer in that position. I've had time to play none of these new games yet for once in my life, and that is sad. But it also means I get to, instead of having that subscription, I get to be more particular. Like, I am going to buy Doom. In June, I'm probably going to buy Expedition 33, and I'm going to be a little bit more focused with it. But if you're someone who has, you know, you're in that phase of your life where you get to game a ton, like, why would you pay $60, $70, $80? I mean, even just in that list you gave of Indiana Jones, South of Midnight, Oblivion, Ninja Gaiden, blah, blah, blah. Like that's like $250 of games.
Yes.
Why would you pay that?
Well, real quick, I do want to highlight something. Expedition 33 is only $50 in the US.
Also that.
It's already got 10% off on Steam right now. Okay, now if you're listening to the show a little bit later, this deal is going for another 26 hours. So the show will be out tomorrow, which means you probably don't have a ton of time. But for $45, you can get basically Game of the Year, lots and lots of hours, lots of depth, all that stuff on Steam. Yep. But playing Oblivion Remastered last week, few grumpy comments because I covered it. And they're like, aren't you the guy that says don't get caught up in the FOMO? Why would you buy a Bethesda game day one on PC? And I just wrote back, I was like, Game Pass, dude. Yeah. Like, I fully agree with your statement. They have proven their PC releases are rough and chunky and a bummer. But it turns out this one's actually like pretty decent in my opinion, at least on my specs. But playing it on Game Pass was absolutely low risk. Now, I want to own some of these games. I want to own Expedition 33, the Oblivion Remaster. I don't want to have a Game Pass sub just spinning all the time if I'm not utilizing it. I fully agree with that argument. Physical ownership rocks. This digital streaming, you don't own anything. It's got huge setbacks to it. It's got big time negatives to it. But in my mind, it's the new GameFly. It's the new Blockbuster. And if you are really worried and you don't have the $60, $70 to throw down on a game, and you've got the right hardware for it, Game Pass right now seems like an awesome choice.
Yeah, I think so this can be a broader discussion we may have later, but like, I have been for a very long time a huge advocate of you have to understand where things came from in order to understand where they are now. And obviously that ties into all my interests in retro tech and blah, blah, blah. I feel like in the 10, 15 years where we transitioned away from Blockbuster and obviously insert your generic video rental stores here to our current gaming system. And especially as we've gotten away from GameStop being, or like, game shops with used games being the default with the digital era, I feel like we have lost our understanding of what role something like Game Pass or even something like streaming media is supposed to serve. If you think about streaming music, for me, that is a replacement for radio. That's not a replacement for buying a CD and doing what I want with it and making my playlists and whatever. Same thing with what you just said about Game Pass. Like, that is so key, is you can treat it like your trip to Blockbuster, where you have this selection of games. It's not even every game ever. It's a limited selection of games that changes sometimes, and new stuff gets added, and you're like, wow, this is a new thing. That looks really cool. I want to try it out. And you may only have it for a little bit. You don't get to dictate the terms of which you play it, but you get to experience it for a cheaper price. And then should you decide that this is your next 10-year game, or that if it gets removed and you still want to beat it or whatever, then you either, wait for it on sale or just commit to just buying it. That is an extremely healthy way to use the service. And I feel like anyone who just hasn't thought about something like Blockbuster in a while or something kind of forgets that. It's not supposed to replace the sale for everyone. For a lot of people, it might, especially if you're someone who can beat it in a couple weeks or whatever. But I think it's still healthy to kind of build that relationship with the thing you buy if you plan on keeping it long term.
Yeah, I miss the era. It was all try before buy growing up. Everything. I don't think I would ever, until I was old enough to like have a summer job and stuff, it was pretty much always try before you buy. And then beyond that, demo disc culture, because you would get demo discs. You could spend $12 for a magazine at the grocery store. Came with a demo disc, and I would play like all 10 of them. And the demos were short most of the time. Sometimes they were lengthy, but for 20, 30 minutes, you got to try the game. And games have a unique aspect. They feel a certain way. You can watch Expedition 33 footage all you want. Until you parry and feel that thrill, you won't get it. Because I'm telling you, dude, the moment you parry your first move in that game, you're like, oh, I'm in. this is it. This is it. We're going to talk on the Dual Comm episode in July after you've tried the game. And we're going to have this discussion. I am curious. Series X, right, comes out in 2020 or 2025 right now.
That hurts. Yeah, but yeah, proceed.
Is it starting to age out? When do you think we may see new Xbox hardware? I know this is all the rumor and the speculation. Are we at a point where we're starting to see some necessity to it? Because PlayStation did their mid-generation update. Doesn't look like Xbox has plans to do that, unless maybe I'm totally wrong. I'm out of the Xbox world. But as the games get more and more demanding, like an Expedition 33, I'm starting to feel like Series X is going to be struggle busing the next 3 or 4 years if we don't get something new.
I think it might be. I am in this weird mind about it because from what I understood, whenever they launched 2 consoles at the same time in 2020, was their plan was to not need a Pro console because they shipped it with the cheaper console.
Yeah.
Now, to me, even at the time, I was saying that was kind of a silly decision because the Xbox Series S was in some ways weaker than the Xbox One X. So it was like this weird, it was a weird box. I have one that I bought for like my DF work and for other little things. And it's a very weird system to play with no disk drive. You can do the 4K output, but your scale, the image scaling is very limited compared to the X. It is a very weird box that would not compete with, the base model PS5 by any stretch. That was still the Series X. And so you're right. I, especially watching the DF review of Expedition 33 and seeing, it's available on Xbox Series S and X and seeing how it compared to the PS5 and the PS5 Pro. In some ways, I would stand firm being like, no, I mean, we're 5 years in, so all the console hardware is aging, but like in many ways, it is keeping up with what the PS5 does, and that is fine. That's really all they need to do because the PS5 Pro has has the quality bump that I think, especially in our current economic times, most people aren't caring about. Like, you get such
no
good
chance
quality.
I'll buy a Pro.
Yeah, you get such good quality out of the PS5 and the Series X that it's almost like there was some debate with John Linneman about the Final Fantasy on the PS5 Pro, and he's like, this makes me not even want to play the PS5 anymore. And lots of people are like, I don't even see a difference. What are you talking about? And it's one of those things that compression
things too,
does not show you. And then also the 8K output that was promised for the PS5 and never happened, and no one has an 8K TV, so that doesn't matter. Like I feel pretty confident that no, it's not aging out yet.
Yeah. Well, especially with games that have such granularity with the settings.
Yeah,
the
and
fact
with all
that you
the
can
AI
really dig into
upscaling.
the different modes and stuff.
Yeah, I think if Microsoft doesn't panic and change what I am perceiving, this is pure speculation, but what I am perceiving their strategy to have been this whole time, I think they come out with a handheld soon, which is in the opposite direction of specs. That allows, leverages all of the scaling and stuff they've been working on with Play Anywhere, all of their, this game will run on anything policy that they've been working on. And in another 2 or 3 years, they have a new console.
Yeah.
And PlayStation probably doesn't because they just put out the Pro model to extend the lifespan. They might be in a position to completely change the pacing of their generation versus PlayStation's by not doing a Pro. And by having the handheld first.
Jumping ahead, basically. Their new mainline hardware hits a year or two before PS6.
Yes. They're going to have a handheld before Sony because Sony is now trying to do one, but they hit the portal and not the handheld. Like, they're going to have a proper handheld first if all of the talk of them seemingly planning on debuting it at CES and then still holding on, like, all of the talk has suggested like they already have one. Like,
summer Game Fest. It would make perfect sense.
It seems like they're just waiting to show it to us for the right time. They were probably waiting out Switch 2. So they're going to have a handheld first. And then I think if they hold their cards and have been, obviously, all of this would have had to be in development right now to happen. But assuming that's where they're going, I think they are in a position to release whatever new generation Xbox will look like in a couple years. And Sony will not be there. And I think that will radically change the entire like conversation of the for lack of a better term, the console war between them. Because they've kind of been the underdogs this time. Like,
yeah,
they had the two consoles, but like theirs has always been kind of slightly underpowered in some ways, at least in terms of how the optimization works out compared to the PS5. And they've had a lot of PR issues and a lot of people questioning buying Xbox hardware at all because of it being available anywhere.
We've talked about it a lot. It's been wonky, and it's been hard to see the 4D chess plan that everybody, keeps talking about. But then we have moments like right now where I see just nothing but sparkles and sunshine on Game Pass, and it's starting to make sense. What if they release a few months after Switch 2 or something like that? They reveal at Games Pass a new Xbox handheld. It's $400. It's got great specs. It's got a nice screen. They take a huge hit on the hardware cost.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've got basically the full Game Pass library on a handheld. And it's built with a few features that maybe like challenges the Steam Deck's position. Because clearly, like what you said last time, Switch 2 made some strategic choices that showed that they were threatened by Steam Deck, that they are trying to compete for some of that audience share.
And
Phil
Spencer has gone out of his way to make it clear that they are not feeling threatened by anyone. Like they want to work with Valve. They want to get your games on PlayStation. They are going out of their way to say, hey, nothing is going to scare us here. We want to make the best games. And one quote that sticks with me from him over and over, because it didn't make sense for the past 5 years of this console generation, is he keeps saying he wants to make sure, like whenever he's asked about Xbox hardware, like, will they continue it? What's the point? He keeps saying he is working to make sure the Xbox hardware platform is the best place to play those games.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big, like I said, a big like trump card they can pull. If they can pull out a new generation before Sony and just be like, this is it. And with the handheld, like you said, they could set it up where you can stream your games from your PC, just like the Steam Deck, but make it a lot easier, because it's not super easy all the time with Steam Deck stuff. They will support Steam on it. Like, and then they're like, yeah, you can play our games on Switch. Would you want to?
If they nailed the ecosystem, I could actually see myself being pretty interested in that, with where Game Pass is getting. If they nail a few more little windows like this year with Expedition 33, Oblivion Remaster, we've got Doom the Dark Ages coming out. If they keep stacking them, my interest in a Switch 2 is at a complete low. And I loved my Switch 1, and I just don't see any, unless there's the most killer game of all time. I just don't see it, dude. I can't see $80 games, that piece of hardware, all that stuff. I'll wait. Let's get to the mid-generation of that thing. Let's get it down a few, $50, $100 or whatever. It probably won't ever happen because it's Nintendo. So,
and you started the year being like, all right, I'm for sure getting this. Here's my 5-step plan to get it. And then it's revealed and you're just like, I don't know.
Yep.
I love it.
Yep.
I do think there's so much room for Xbox to compete, because they were willing to not compete as strongly this generation, that it's kind of just their ball game right now. Like they could pull out any stop and surprise us. The problem is they've lost a lot of, I don't want to say trust, but like rapport in the decision making, because they weren't willing to reveal the plan. And so they've had so many people question and be like, well, I feel like Xbox doesn't care about me being a player of Xbox anymore. I guess I'm gone. But if they do all of this, that narrative that they've had consistently this whole time that people remember, even if they make fun of it, of we want Xbox to be the best place to play these games, but also you can play them everywhere else. That argument of, yes, you can play it on Switch, you can play it on PlayStation, but it's so much better over here, is the ultimate. Like, forget console exclusives. Like, that is the ultimate. We will sell you our game, but you will probably want to play it over here and let us sell you the box for it too. But that won't keep us from selling the game, because then they still get the sales, and then they get to convince people to come over to their better experience.
Yep.
And that feels very old school. Like, that's very try it at the arcade, play it at home. Like, I don't know.
They could do it. They could also shoot themselves in the foot.
They could, 100%. And if they launch too early and don't have, as competitive specs, and then 3-ish years later, PlayStation comes out with an even bigger PS6 that like kicks whatever new Xbox's butt, then that creates an awkward thing. So
yeah,
it's hard with consoles.
Yeah. Well, why don't we take the first break, and we will see you all in just a few seconds, for us like 2 minutes.
Over the break, I'm buying Expedition 33 and Lies of P on Steam since they're on sale.
Yes, dude. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone. All right, Epos, I've thought about this a bunch because I've game hopped so much this year in contrast to last year. Do you have to beat a game to truly appreciate it? Can you genuinely enjoy and value a game that you have never rolled credits on? And if so, what games are they and how?
This probably depends on like what happens in the game, right? Like there are some games where it radically shifts halfway through, or towards the end, or has a plot twist that if you miss it, you miss it. But I'd say for me personally, like as someone who has not finished many games in his long career of gaming, I 100% can play a good quarter of a game and feel like I got all of it. And like I'll even go back and check, what happens or let's plays or whatever, and be like, yep, it didn't really change. I got the gist. That's good for me. I think it depends also on like your relationship with it, which I know I've brought this up already today, but like if it's a game that you're sitting down with and really, like with Expedition 33, like you were thinking about it at work, you were wanting to get back to it, you were going to feel very accomplished going through and hitting credits or reaching whatever natural endpoint of playing. But if there's a game you're just having fun with and it just kind of falls off, you may not be compelled to go back, but that doesn't mean you didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think there's a discussion online where like you have to roll credits in order for you to be able to even talk about the game, right? You didn't get it unless you got through the final gauntlet and beat the ultra super bosses, because a lot of this stuff is pretty arbitrary. I get it in a story game, but jumping back to JRPGs, I've never beat the super bosses in Final Fantasy X. I love Final Fantasy X. I love that game. Maybe someday I will, but I've never felt the urge for a lot of the completionist stuff. And I'm sure there's people who would say, well, you didn't actually experience the game then, BBK. If you didn't get that 100%, I don't think you're qualified to discuss this or have an opinion on it. Another example, Octopath Traveler on my Switch. That game was super fun. The combat was great. The pixel art 3D, 2D style was awesome. But I got to maybe the last 15% of the game and fell off and never went back and finished it. But I feel like I've gotten a pretty good gist of what the mechanics are, the game was, and I view it super positively. And let's face it, life has changed for you and I. 10 years ago, or 15, whatever, like I don't even, when you are at a stage where you have less responsibility in life, there's more time. But these days, I don't know, everything shifts. If I get 30 to 40 minutes in a day to play, right now that feels really good. There's plenty of days like yesterday, I just, no time to play. You get home from work, there's chores and things that you need to do, and you're tired, you go to bed, and you look forward to the next session. And so I am trying this year to not necessarily make it to where I have to finish everything or feel like I have to even discuss it or talk about it, especially on this show or on YouTube,
I think there's definitely a change in the depth to which you understand a game if you've beaten it versus not, for sure.
Yeah, if you're reviewing it, I want you to have finished it,
I honestly don't know that there's been a game that I've beaten where I feel like my positions on it, my understanding of it even has radically changed or like, pivoted from when I was halfway through it and was like, yeah, I get it, versus rolling credits. Like you definitely develop more, if anything, you develop more of a bias towards like like a survivor bias of when you beat a game versus someone who made it halfway and was like, yeah, I'm good. Like, you're going to make excuses for more systems, or you're going to have more grudges against certain gameplay systems that you ran into and had to put up with for an extra
God of War 2018.
Yeah. Like,
I'm sorry, I didn't love it. I tried so hard, and by the end I was like, I don't think this is exactly what I was hoping for.
yeah. I think it can shift how you feel. I don't think it needs to determine whether you can talk about it. Especially because, like you said, when you get busy and stuff, it keeps you from experiencing so many other games. And I think understanding how you feel about a game, what games you like, and what you look for in a game is kind of dependent on building up that greater context of what games you like and don't like. And if you stuck with one game forever, you don't build that up because you didn't expose yourself to more.
Mm-hmm. And I think I want to be specific. My case of talking about it on YouTube is not really the centerpiece of the discussion. It's really beating a game is probably not the right benchmark for appreciating a game. It's a component of it, but that's all I'm trying to say. I will, like, excuse me, with Nier Automata, I'm replaying that game, and I'm almost done. Without giving spoilers, the game has multiple endings. That's fairly well known. If you just stop after the first ending, you missed out on so much of what makes the game great. And I can't say more for spoilers, but I'm almost done with that first ending. And I'm going to go through it this year and finish it. And it is kind of cool. I do love that feature on the PS5, just seeing your playtime and how it carried over my PS4 playtime from back when I played it in, like, whatever, 17 or 18. I'm getting close to 50 hours played on Nier Automata.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, this is sick. I love it, dude. But I'm not going to also, if you played 3 or 4 hours of that game and you're like, I loved it and I want to finish it someday, I don't like the elitism of the completionists who then throw back at you, oh, you plebeian, you didn't finish it, you loser. You're not allowed to talk about it. You didn't even experience the game. Like, that kind of gatekeeping sucks.
No, and like I said, you especially once you've played enough games, you know whether you enjoyed it or not. Like, I can play a good 3 hours of something, and once I've gotten, like, that's what kills me about a lot of games that we've talked about before, especially the heavy story ones now, where, like, the startup is so slow. You can play 10 hours before you get to the gameplay loop. That drives me nuts. But games where I can get into the core gameplay loop within a few hours, I can tell you affirmatively whether I'm going to keep playing it at all for the rest of my life and whether I enjoyed it or not. And there might be some further depth to unlock, but, like, broadly speaking, once I get a feel for the systems, I know whether I'm going to jive with it or not. And, like, you can, like you said, for, like, reviews or something, you can be like, okay, well, you can't really analyze the story if you haven't gotten through the whole story and seen all the points.
Yeah. I read the first chapter of the book.
Yeah.
Story's crap.
Playing it and talking about whether you enjoyed playing it, you don't, any individual, how you play and engage with a game is entirely personal. There are games like the Pokemon games that I grew up playing. I have rolled credits on those games a bajillion times. The credits don't really change anything. The game doesn't radically, for most of them, the game does not radically shift after the first few hours. You get a gym badge, you catch a few Pokemon, that's the whole game.
Yep.
There may be some extra gimmicks or features, but, like, that is the game. You get it. And those games, I've rolled credits a million times and played a million different ways, and that's fine. But then there are other games that you could roll credits on that I specifically just never have. I think I might have mentioned in a past podcast episode, but the Gauntlet games, the arcade ports for PS2 and Xbox and stuff, and even the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, the, like, top-down Diablo-light games, even though they came before Diablo. I play those all the time. I've played them for my entire life. Very rarely have I ever beaten one because, frankly, especially if I go 6 months in between loading up a save, I get kind of bored just getting thrown into a world of a character I've already forgotten and, you know, stuck in some dungeon that was probably hard, which is why I took a break. I will just roll a new character, and that experience of customizing your character and then getting, like, that the core gameplay loop is what's fun, not necessarily beating the last 3 chapters that let me roll credits. Like, that doesn't give me more fulfillment that outweighs just playing and enjoying it. And as someone who enjoys a lot now of roguelikes, where it's designed to be an endless game, like you can beat Hades, but I can also have played it off and on for years now and never beaten it, because the point is not to progress through a linear story, it's to just keep playing the endless dungeon runner.
Yep.
And it's so much fun, especially if you only have little blocks of time. Like, it's honestly harder mentally for me to try to pick up a game that has a direct story to engage with when I'm trying to play on my Steam Deck, or I'm trying to play for 10 or 15 minutes before bed.
The session game, dude. The session game. Go for it.
Those are so much fun and fulfill such a crucial role. And any story game that I can turn into a session game because it's that flexible ends up meaning a lot to me, even if I never beat it. And I will continue to advocate for those kinds of games once I know enough to know how good they are. I don't think I need to have rolled credits to be able to talk about it, or talk about what I've struggled with its systems, or to suggest that other people play it. Like, I talk about Heavenly Sword all the time.
Yeah.
Wonderful game. That old school DMC, Bayonetta, God of War style combat. Tons of performance issues. Has a couple motion controller gimmicks. But I will continue to advocate that we get a remake of it that actually runs well, and suggest that anyone play it if they want that old school style game. But I've never beaten it. I've played it a million times, but I've never beaten it.
Yep.
I don't know how it ends.
Dude, Andy Serkis, by the way, is in Expedition 33.
Yeah.
Speaking of Heavenly Sword.
Is he?
Yeah.
That's sick.
Anyway. Before I mention the MMO thing I wanted to talk about on this topic, speaking of session games, SSX3, the snowboarding game from PS2 and Xbox, and I think it was on GameCube. I am telling you, dude, it's so good. I played, because I'm making a video about this PlayStation 2 that you helped me put a solid state drive in.
Yes.
Right? And I'm playing lots of games, and you're trying to get all the footage and the stuff, Ape Escape 2 and Hot Shots Golf 3. I just keep coming back to SSX. And when I sit down to record, I've played like 3 hours of this game, dude, on multiple days. Like, not the same, like over multiple days. It's so good. I'm just trying to tell you guys, go on eBay, get a copy for Xbox. It's like $5. The PlayStation 2 copies are like $12, okay? PCSX2. The emulator on PC runs this thing incredibly well. I don't know how it runs on Xbox with backwards compatibility. That would be actually sort of fun to check out, because you can still buy it on the Xbox store. It's like $10. It is so freaking good, Epos, and it's exactly what you are talking about. It's the kind of game I want on my Switch. I wish I had a Steam Deck or a handheld, or could throw it on my PSP or something, because it is the most ridiculous, polished. It's Forza Horizon 10 years early, 15 years early, in a snowboarding game with insane music, incredible gameplay, so much freaking fun. And it's what you just said. I don't want to beat that game. There is no beating that game. It's the kind of game I will sit down and play over and over and over again. Even if I see credits, it doesn't matter. You're not playing to reach credits. And that's kind of the difference.
Yeah. That's how I feel about a lot of games these days. Obviously, you look at a game like what we opened with, Expedition 33.
Yeah.
Kind of the primary objective is to get through to the end of the story. Narrative
is different, for sure.
Those, honestly, I would almost argue those are not as common as people think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are obviously, you could name off the top of your head a good handful of major story franchises. You know, you got Last of Us, God of War, Horizon, whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
But most video games are not that. Either they're multiplayer in the first place, or they are these more kind of fluid experiences. I think about even Baldur's Gate. It is a very heavy story-driven game. I have now played it off and on since it released in August of 2023. I have 150 plus hours into it.
Yeah.
I have not beaten it.
Yeah.
Because it has so much of a sandbox that, yes, the goal is at some point to finish Act 3 and beat it with my wife. But, like, you can continue to enjoy the game for another 400 hours without beating it if you don't want to, because you can keep spinning up new characters or just explore the world, every little nook and cranny, or try different approaches to encounters. And that is the fun of the game. Like, to me, like, it's cool to reach the end of especially a story game and be like, yeah, I worked for this. That's great. What a good cap to the story. Whatever. My favorite games, though, are the ones where you get to that point and you're like, all right, I'm ready to spin it back up. New game plus, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it's going to be with the Midnight Suns game I'm playing. Like, there is immediately a new game plus mode where you get to keep a lot of stuff and do whatever. And it's like, yeah, I want to stay in the loop. I didn't beat it just to be done with it. I want to just keep playing.
And that takes confidence to make a really good game. I was going to mention the MMO thing. So you've played a lot of MMOs over your time, correct?
Yes.
And you know the phrase, oh, it gets good when you hit endgame. Or it gets good when you finish leveling, or you get geared out,
hours
or whatever.
1,000 hours in.
We've all heard that. And I think there's nothing wrong with being like, well, why can't it just be good all the way through? Why can't it be good all the way through? And with MMOs in particular, World of Warcraft was mine. And then I played Final Fantasy 14 through the Heavensward patch story. A lot of fun. But I am no longer in that space where I'm probably going to be pushing through a lot of the junk to get to the, it gets good at this chapter. You kind of got to push through this junk. Because time is super valuable. And when you have games dropping like Expedition 33, I can already see myself playing the game again. They've built systems that reward solid gameplay, different builds. The best story I can share, Toast Bomb, super old Halo, like legendary YouTuber back in the day. He recommended Dark Souls to me. This was maybe 2013, 2014. I was a little late to the party. I get it. I play through the Prepare to Die edition on PC. Super fun. Dark Souls 2 comes out. I play it on the 360. I beat it like 3 times in a row on the 360. I finish, I immediately spin up a new game plus. I finish another new game plus, start PvPing. And then at that time, the Scholar of the First Sin edition came out for Xbox One. I had just gotten an Xbox One and I played through it again. And for, I want to say whatever, like months or a year, I just played through that game over and over and over again. And I loved it. I could not get enough of it. And because it had those systems that encourage you to play it again, I really didn't get bored or burnt out of it. I could go back and play through that game again. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, those are my favorite games. Those are the games where it's like that will stay. I mean, the same thing like when I wrapped on Mass Effect last summer, I was immediately planning my next like 3 playthroughs of the different things I wanted to do. Like, those are the games where you're not, it's such a weird, like, if I were to give a blueprint to a AAA studio, I don't know what I would tell them, because the games are that way because they are not designed to keep you around. It's so counterintuitive, but they made something that just, you really, all you focus on is the satisfaction and the enjoyment of the loop and of the process of starting over and what you get from it and the systems at play, and not any superficial thing that might encourage you to keep playing. And with MMOs, that struggle was such a ridiculous, I mean, I am someone who never reached any sort of end game in World of Warcraft because I hated the loop and I didn't understand why would I spend my time suffering in this to reach some supposedly good end game versus playing a good game. But I did enjoy, like, I pretty much only enjoyed the normal game of Guild Wars 2 before you got to the end game. Played through a ton of that with my wife. We still have all the expansions to get back through at some point because I did eventually get burned out. Yeah. That's what I enjoyed about Warframe. Like, you have to get past the friction of figuring it out. But once you get the flow going of the star chart and stuff, like, that was some of the best game experience I've probably ever had. And then when I ran out of star chart and got to the end game where I then had to figure out all these systems again, that's when I'm like, I don't know anymore. And I know you went through the same thing when you picked it up on Switch or whatever.
Hard.
You were like,
I hate endgame in Warframe.
But I know when you picked it up on the Switch insane. And you were like, doing the core game again is a lot of fun.
Yeah. And people got mad when I said I would enjoy a Diablo or a Path of Exile style season mode in Warframe, where you go through the star chart, the gear is seasonal, and then, but yeah, people absolutely hated that. The MR 50 trillion people who have everything ever in the game. So, but yeah, go for it.
I was just gonna say, just to cap it off, like I think people, and this has been, I think, a consistent theme across all these episodes, people need to be a lot more forgiving with themselves with this as a hobby. Of if you are not, like, if you've kind of reached a natural point where you're just kind of done with a game, let yourself be done. Don't push yourself to finish if it's gonna, because it could ruin your perspective of it. Like, if you push yourself to finish when you're kind of done having fun, just like with multiplayer games, like, you could then not enjoy the game as much or not look back on it as fondly. Whereas if you let yourself stop at that natural point, you can find yourself coming back in 6 months or 10 years or whenever and enjoying it all over again. Whereas that's less likely to happen if you burn yourself out on it.
It's about playing the game, not beating the game.
Yeah.
Beating games is cool and it's fun and it's really gratifying. Like, I enjoy finishing a game and feeling like I got the value out of it. But if that's the sole objective, we've talked about this in previous shows, that kind of backlog culture can be, there's like a dark side to it where it's this chain that you put on yourself to finish everything that you've ever bought on a Steam sale, even if it was like $1 game and you're not liking it. Like, who cares? It's no one cares if your backlog list at the end of the year is 300 game finishes. If you didn't have fun, fun, who cares?
Yeah, if you're then miserable and arguing with everyone online, you haven't done any good.
Yeah.
Like, is your hobby playing video games, or is it managing a backlog or being a completionist? Those are different hobbies.
I've got to find there's a comment from a Josh Strife Hayes video that I read and I thought it was amazing. So while I'm looking for that, would you introduce the next topic? Because EA had a bunch of layoffs, didn't they?
Yeah. So EA just laid off a significant number of people. I'm trying to get the exact number. It was like hundreds, I think.
That sucks.
And then, of course, canceled. Yeah. So between 300 and 400 staff, 100 of which were at Respawn, which, when we think back to the Respawn we were so stoked on forever ago, I don't even think they were 100 people in the first place. So that kind of shows the bloat that happens too. But like 300 to 400 people, including 100 at Respawn, and they canceled an in early development Titanfall extraction shooter, which no one was asking for. But because one or two games found a lot of success for, these studios keep pushing to make them. And then when they run out of money, having this many extra people developing these projects that aren't going to make money, everyone loses their jobs and the game gets canceled instead of just making another good Titanfall that might have sold a couple 100,000 copies. I don't want to overinflate Titanfall's success, but like, I am someone who will happily just kind of be like, okay, EA can just go away now. Like, they have squandered a lot of potential with BioWare and some of the other franchises, and I'm ready for their model. Like, I feel like most big publishers have gotten away from, like, for a while EA was just one of many that were doing things that EA does, and now EA's kind of just still themselves while everyone else has at least shifted in some way.
Yeah.
But it's so, I can't imagine working in the games industry.
No, I think it would ruin everything you love about it, unless you were at a cool place like Sandfall.
Yeah. I can't imagine working in AAA, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Because everything is built by, or like dictated by these executives that just see numbers and want to make number go up. And when they don't make the right call, it's not them who face any consequences.
Nope.
They're still making a ton of money. They still have their job.
Same players.
Yeah. Instead, they lay off all the game devs that they brought on and probably forced to move out to their studio, city, and then they have to go find new jobs again and move. Like, it just seems like a horrible cycle. I feel like, it's this weird, and I've said this before, but it's this weird counterintuitive thing where I feel like if you have that many people working on a game, you should be able to spin up experimental stuff to tackle trends so quickly.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to have 300 to 400 people working on your trend chasing games, they should be able to pop something out in a year or two. It should not be an 8-year-long project. It should be, hey, let's find out if the people want this. Put something out there. Not, and I said the same thing about Halo. Like, I do not understand why we're spending 10 years making a Halo game when fans are making Halo VR experiences in a matter of months, and I would pay for that. So many people would pay for that. It doesn't need to be a blockbuster masterpiece, like multi-million-dollar project. It just needs to be a fun little game people will play. And if you're like, hey, people are interested in VR, let's see if there's any space for Halo in VR. Let's spend a couple months or even 6 months spinning up a fun VR experience. Like they did, you mentioned before, the Spartan Assault and Spartan Strike, the little top-down shooters, whenever they were getting into the like touch screen space. Like, just spin it up. Do it quickly. If you have that many people, you should be cranking out experiments, not spending 8 years inflating your costs to the extent that you'll never make the money back, even if it is successful.
The 3 best Halo games came out 01, 04, 07, and they are exceptional games. They're the standouts in the series. At the time, they were pioneering new technology. They were pushing online infrastructure on consoles with like the paradigm of matchmaking for Halo 2. And here, you're completely right. Not only they have let bloat and scope and things get so ridiculous and the timelines for development get insane, because if you're going to chase a trend, like if the rumor is true and it is a Titanfall extraction shooter that was canceled, you're right. They should have been able to spin that out within 2, maybe 3 years. It should have been lower scope. It should have been a game that they didn't see having a 10-year lifespan. They saw it maybe having, a 3-year lifespan, super supportive, and then they bring in a new or a follow-up title that benefits the game, but this 10-year thing is not going to work. Because I just looked it up on Google Trends. Escape from Tarkov, the absolute height of the interest for the search traffic for that game was in February 2020. It's been a steady decline since then. And your interest, at least if you're looking at Google search trends, it's basically the same volume that it was back in like 2016 and 17. So by the time your extraction shooter comes out, same thing with Marathon, and you've got all of these people putting this out because the developers thought, Tarkov's hot, extraction shooters are cool, like this is the new wave to ride. The wave's over, and you've all just like oversaturated things. Like Titanfall 3 would sell like hotcakes if they made it a successor to Titanfall 2. A good campaign on that tier, another multiplayer with some new mechanics and a bunch of new maps. Give us that, and then give us Titanfall 4 in 3 years. I guarantee you it's an overwhelming success, but they have to go for this stupid boardroom, publicly traded investor corpo junk, which is it's live service, it's 10 years, it's supported through battle passes and microtransactions. I hate that, dude.
And I think, like, if you are going to hop on the trend, just make it a mode on a game you have. And I know people don't like it when that happens either, but, like, that's better than making entire dedicated games for this that require hundreds of employees. Like, I think about when Firefight was introduced with freaking Halo ODST, and it became this game-changing thing that was kind of capitalizing on the Horde mode that Gears of War and Left 4 Dead kind of introduced to the world. Instead of just making a Halo Horde game, they just tacked it on to a very small game because they had the multiplayer team doing nothing at the moment. Like, it should be that easy. And I looked it up. Halo 3 was made with under 120 employees. Now, I don't want to understate how poorly Bungie was managed even during the first 3 Halo games. If you watch the Vidocs and like look into it, like
just mega like overtime and stuff.
Yeah, they are not a shining example of things to do, but the fact that they could do it in that short amount of time with that number of employees further to me iterates that you should not have the amount of bloat that we have in virtually any current AAA space without cranking out games, because ultimately more time spent on game versus more games released, the more time spent on game is less profitable no matter what game you release.
I don't know how long Claire Obscure Expedition 33 was under development, but it was a team of like 30 people, and so they clearly scoped what was realistic and they stuck with it. Same thing with Baldur's Gate 3. The games that do set that realistic, we can have sick games like Halo 3 again. And I don't get the argument that it's like, no, it takes 10 years. It's so different now. You don't get it, Dragoon. I don't want the 10-year game if it means I wait 10 years for it.
Yeah, right. if it's that different for the studio, then the studio is the problem. It's not the industry. And I mean,
Halo Infinite's like dead anyway, and it's been 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah. And we continue to have examples. I mean, we've had Larian with Baldur's Gate. I mean, even freaking Balatro was made by like one guy. Like, obviously it is a small roguelike card game, but like each niche has a type of game that plays to it really, really well. And if EA tried to make a Balatro, it would still be like 100 employees and multiple years of development, and not just make a fun little card game with something innovative.
Yeah.
Like that. I've said this before over and over on the show. I do not know how you can be an executive in this space. Like, to me, if I go into a niche, like making YouTube videos or whatever, I'm going to look at what's actually successful and think, what do I need to do to replicate that? And with gaming, over and over, it's make a really good game in a reasonable amount of time and sell it and let people play it and don't force them to do stuff. That is repeatedly the path to success that AA and indie devs are making riches from. And instead they look at, I don't know, like Fortnite, and they're just like, that's it. Like, you need to see what more than one person is like. You can't look at Mr. Beast and be like, that's going to be my YouTube channel. If you're not rich. Yet
so many people chased that ultra retention editing, absurd spectacle style. All of the guru channels are like, you need to make videos like Mr. Beast, and it ruined an entire like 2 years of content for a lot of people. And the moment he like started chilling out the retention editing, people will chase those trends. And I think the corpo big publishers, they're just reading the line item spreadsheet of the money earned and the engagement hours spent and going, we need that because that will attract more people to buy the share.
I don't know if AAA can recover, like, on the broader scale, at least like the main big publishers like EA, Ubisoft, those kinds of things. I don't know if there's a path to fixing itself. I think we see examples where this is still done better. Like, look at all of Sony's studios, like Insomniac and Santa Monica, and obviously their in-house kind of association with teams like Team Asobi for Astrobot. Like, they're pushing the big kind of corporate value and tech demos, but they are also making good games that people enjoy. But outside of that, I mean, I think they have
FPS is cooked at AAA. It's cooked. I think it's basically the mobile game sector at this point. It's pure trend chasing. It's only about the money, and I just don't see many inspired original games coming out of that space. I loved Splitgate 1 so much, and Splitgate 2 does have a lot of stuff that looks cool, but it's very clear they picked up teams and developers of people who came from all of the other big major AAA FPS like spaces, and they put all of that junk into the new game. And it's like, but you were Arena, you were Core, and now it's basically all of the stuff that is the trends, just in new packaging.
And that's another thing. I mean, that is a prime example. I have tried to not be super complainy about it, but like, that is a prime example of that kind of mentality that I don't understand. Like, Splitgate was fun. We both thoroughly enjoyed it. It had its moment in the sun or in the spotlight, but it was a game that attracted like, what, 6,000 people at a time at its peak?
It had like a huge summer when COD was rough. And there was cheating, and it got a bunch of attention on YouTube. So there were like 100K like concurrents,
I guess,
smashing the servers. But no, it rolled very quickly back down to that 10, 15K concurrent number or whatever. And that was the core community there.
Right. Like, to me, you have to look at that and be like, this is who plays the game. So yes, you could try to scale that a little bit, but you should scale it within realism of who is going to play the game. Giving any and I'm not being, this isn't specifically about.
Yeah, it's not out yet. We can't judge it, all that stuff. We've only played the alpha or whatever, but yeah.
But to me, it makes no sense to put that much money into a studio that makes a niche. Like, if you give if someone took the guy, I'm just going to use, because I have no association with them and I don't know what they're doing, but the guy who made Balatro, if you went like, okay, we're going to give you EA levels of money to make your next game, that would make no sense.
Yeah, Balatro 2 is Uno. It's not poker.
Yeah, like it would make no sense to just dump that much money into a game that found lots of success and made lots of money, but only appeals to like X kind of person, and be like, yeah, we're just going to scale this and make it appeal to everybody. Like, that's not how a video game works.
When you try and please everybody, you just don't please anyone at that point. It's mediocre, right? It's just mediocre. You can't make a food dish that every single person at the table is going to enjoy, you know?
I think that's this weird contradiction of like video gaming is really cool now in public opinion. And like in many ways that broad appeal has granted us the ability for it to appeal to more people. But also it feels less cool to those of us who were around before because it no longer appeals specifically to any person. It only appeals to an amalgamation of what a person should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found the comments I was looking for. They don't directly tie into this topic. They tie more into what we were talking about previously, like with Warframe and appreciating games and stuff like that. But this is a video from Josh Strife Hayes on his Says channel called Why MMOs Are Insufferable. And he's just talking about community within MMOs. Top comment here from Gratane. The only thing worse than not having anyone to talk to about your hobbies is having to talk to the people who are way more into your hobby than you are. And I've got one more that backs it up from Mithril Zenith. The quote is, I think I enjoy stuff more the less I interact with the community built around it. End quote.
Yes. Yes.
That's been my life, dude, for the last few years. It's just like, what?
When every little thing you experience or anomaly you encounter is well actually'd and hot takes and debated. Or like the magic of discovering a system in a game yourself is wonderful. And when you lose that charm because you've already had everyone kind of explain it for you or find the exploits in, like, what if you go into a game and you already know like the cheats or the infinite money exploit or something, you lose the charm of just playing it normal. I mean, it's the same thing of like you go into an old multiplayer game and it's all full of cheaters now. It's like, I'm sure they're having a little bit of fun, but like that pure experience is just kind of ruined.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with those kinds of things. Like, we've preached before on this show about, you know, spending more time gaming than involved in the discourse. And I think it's the same thing with just like popularity. Like, the more people want to just keep talking about the thing around you, the less kind of exciting it is. I remember, that's weird. It made me think of this memory I have when I got my very first job. I got hired the day Skyrim came out. You know, basic retail job. But I had my interview and got hired the day Skyrim went out. I was in college and I was like, all right, I'm going to go buy Skyrim. I was the only person at my GameStop pre-ordering it on PC. So that was weird. But, you know, I picked it up and I remember like going in the next day for my first day of training and talking to some guy there that was going to work in the like back end IT side or something. I don't know. But he was like, so what you got going on this weekend? Because it was like, you know, it came out on a Friday or a Thursday or whatever. He's like, so what are you doing this weekend? I'm just like, man, I'm just really excited for Skyrim. I got to pre-order it last night. I got to put a few minutes into it, but like, I'm so excited for it. And this dude had clearly been so fed up with everyone talking about Skyrim. And he was just like, yep, sure seems like everyone's really excited for Skyrim. That's all, you know, everyone's just real stoked for this game. Like, that's all I could glean from it. Like, in retrospect, is that everyone had been talking about it. It's all he'd seen commercials for, and he's just so tired of hearing about it. And even if you were excited for it, like that could seriously kind of taint your experience. And I'm that way. Like, I have this thing. I've always considered it a kind of like ADHD thing, but like the more people push me to watch a show or like see a little comedy skit or whatever.
Like, no.
Yeah, the more I'm like, I don't want this. And I'll go back and watch it later and be like, that was amazing. Why did I skip this? But like at the time, I have this resistance where I'm just like, I don't want to do it because you keep telling me to do it.
100%. That is so true. I know so many people who have that same thing. I'm similar, like, especially with music. If too many people are like, this is the best thing ever, it's like, I almost actively don't want to experience it then. And this is why I think designing games with too much community feedback you can end up with something that just doesn't please anybody. And then you're shocked. Like, publishers go, but wait a second. We got all the user surveys. We asked everybody what they wanted. We put the little bits and pieces in so they felt like they were heard. And then it didn't carry the numbers for us to keep the studio open, and the studio shuts down. And it's just so simple. Like, if you are making a good game, you're inspired. You've scoped it correctly. It's not overbloated. You're not chasing trends. You're just trying to make a good game that people will enjoy. You get Expedition 33s. And I know multiplayer is hard. And that's why I said I think AAA multiplayer FPS is pretty cooked right now, because they've all chosen this route where their studio only succeeds if they hit Fortnite level of population and success and holds that for 5+ years. That's not realistic. You cannot chase the lightning in the bottle that was a Fortnite.
And just even creatively, there's a quote from David Bowie about not playing to the gallery, that you're there to play your work, not what is requested, because that is your best work. And there's a quote from some other like comedian or something that's in a similar vein of like, you should never listen to your fans. And obviously, maybe don't take it in extremes, only Sith deals in absolutes or whatever. But, I became a fan of BioWare because of the games they were making that were amazing, not because I had great ideas that I wanted them to implement in games because I know better than them. Same thing with we've seen that with Halo and Call of Duty, where like they bring in all the pros and make all these changes, and then we're like, what is this? You got to trust that you have a creative vision, and that, I mean, even Fortnite for the most part wouldn't have been what it was if someone didn't just kind of have this idea to tweak the mode a little bit. Like, I don't know. I would like to get back to creatives being in charge and making the things.
Yeah.
And I think AAA, like you said, I think it was a very astute note that AAA is very much like mobile games, where like making a game itself is not the priority.
Yeah.
And that really bums me out. And I just quickly wanted to note on like the state of mobile games. I have been someone who kind of infamously had been anti-mobile games for a very long time. We're talking like 10+ years ago now. Even when I was writing for my college paper, I made a YouTube video about it, and then I wrote in my college paper about how like the indie games we had at the time, which were just like Cookie Clickers and Farmville and whatever, like that's not gaming, and that will not be the future of games, even if everyone has it in their pocket. And like for a while, no one agreed with me. They were like, no, people don't have to buy consoles if we have this thing. And fast forward 10 years and we're getting Resident Evil and Assassin's Creed and stuff on iPhones. And I'm just looking at it and I'm like, who really wants to play this?
Who's the audience for this?
Yeah, who's the audience? Because it has to eat up a ton of your storage. They still don't run amazing, and you miss, like, you can't pick it up and put it down like a session game. Like, these are big story games that if you're waiting in a queue, at the DMV or something, and then your name is called and the game closes because you're stopped playing for a while, like, you lose your progress.
Yeah.
That's infuriating on these bigger games. Like, I don't understand who wants that experience. But then the smaller games, it is the most raw, like, form of the AAA following the money kind of scene. And it really disappoints me because there have been a lot of great games on mobile. There's one that I mentioned in the show before. It's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles roguelike that was available for free on Apple Arcade. I picked it up there and wound up then buying it on Steam to play on my Steam Deck because it was so much fun. Same thing with Balatro. I played it on Apple Arcade first and picked up other copies later. There's a Platinum Games game that was funded by Apple Arcade. Platinum Games, top tier game studio. It's called World of Demons.
Action games.
Called World of Demons. It plays very much like, your Bayonettas or whatever. Kind of has a Okami art style with the like cell shaded, very samurai demon yokai focused. A lot of fun, single player story, no predatory microtransactions, no online elements basically whatsoever. There was like a leaderboard, but it never got released anywhere else. And a couple years ago, they just took it offline, removed it from the store, and made it so you couldn't play it anymore with no statement as to why. They're just like, sorry, we're closing the game now. I don't know if their contract was.
This looks like
Apple
Okami.
Ended. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. You could play it with a controller. You could play it with touchpad. It played like just a small PS2 era game. And like I said, I don't know if their contract with Apple ended or whatever, but like it's gone. And because it wasn't a physical game or a game released on another platform of sorts, you don't even have a way to play it if you did own it. Like, it's just gone. And that's continued to happen with games that I end up liking on mobile, because I guess I like good games and not profitable games. There was another one called Mighty Doom, which was a Doom roguelike top-down shooter, and it was super basic, and it had some of the mobile ick, but it was, you run through vertical rooms, and you're a Doom guy, and you level up your weapons, get the BFG, you have your little upgrade paths, and just run through and kill demons and stuff, and it was goofy, but it was a lot of fun. But Bethesda closed down the studio, so the game, again, got completely removed from your device. And then now, we've talked about it last year, Star Wars Hunters, which is a hero shooter for Star Wars.
Yeah.
It was simple. It was basic. It wasn't, it didn't have the depth of Overwatch or Marvel Rivals, but it was a mobile game. It was on Switch because Switch is the same hardware as mobile, so it was a free port. But like, I honestly really enjoyed it. In the phase where I was breaking up with competitive multiplayer games and just wanted a casual in and out experience, I enjoyed the heck out of it. And again, they're shutting it down this year because I guess it's not raking in the money for Zynga. And even though it probably costs nothing to just keep up, like you don't have to keep active support for it, but just like with every other shooter we've seen shut down in the past 3 years, the extra 50 cents to keep it up just isn't worth it. So it's gone. And
it makes no sense to me. Like the World of Demons thing.
Yeah.
Throw it on Steam. You said it had controller support. I would buy that
Switch
game, dude, and play it. It looks awesome.
And it's just one of those, like, I have kind of shifted my position because I feel mobile games can be good. Mobile games, good, subjective, but like you can get some good experience. Because if I'm going to play a phone game, I am waiting in line to pick my kid up from school. I am on the couch where I can't access anything else. I just want something simple I can pull up, mindlessly play for a little bit, has some video gamey mechanics, and lets me chill out for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
World of Demons was that. Star Wars Hunters, if I had time for a 5-10 minute multiplayer game, was that. Diablo Immortal, I haven't put a ton of hours into, but I played it day one and like picked it up from time to time. Like it kind of gave me that Diablo light experience that I love from the Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance games, the Gauntlets, whatever. All of those kinds of things. Like there are good experiences you can have. They are flooded with toxic microtransactions often, and that's a problem. But ultimately, it comes down to the platform is a problem. The platform itself, you have no ownership or control of. So a single-player game like World of Demons that has no reason to ever be taken offline, or to not, if it were sold at GameStop, you'd be buying it used with no problem. It just ceases to exist. And that terrifies me with games. Like, that should never be the case. And so then I wonder why you would want a big AAA game in that space when it has so many, like that your Resident Evil could get taken offline if, the Capcom decides they don't want to work with Apple for the new iPhone, and so they can't keep it synced up anymore. So they're like, well, we have to take it down now. Bye. Like, ugh.
I don't have experience in the mobile space, and I just hate touchscreen gaming, and so I don't have.
I almost always use a controller.
Yeah, and see that would get me interested, but then I'd still be like, I'd rather play something like this on a PSP or a Switch or whatever. But the Suicide Squad, right? It went offline really quickly, and then they put the offline mode in so people could still play the content that they had built. I kind of like that. That is sort of a maybe a symbolic shift. Hopefully it's not. I mean, I'm not saying I want more of the live service to fail super fast and then they have to, but
when it does,
that's the kind of transition that I would hope to see. And I can't imagine, like for Platinum to throw it onto Steam, I can't imagine it's that much money. So it is funny. Is there some licensing or term or agreement here with Apple Arcade? If it doesn't hit X amount of users or revenue, it's just done. And they're so tangled up in the rights for it that Platinum's like, whatever, it's not worth it.
Yeah. And why are we agreeing to those when their games are legendary? Like their games are so... I think about everything we've talked about on this podcast with regards to our favorite childhood games that have stuck with us for 10, 15, 20 years, that have radically altered our experience with gaming and what games we play today. You cannot build that up on a platform in an industry where games just vanish and you don't get control over any of the terms that you engage with the game on. Like, it's upsetting. Like, the game could have run on any platform. Why not? Why do that? And it's also, it creates this self-fulfilling prophecy of the mobile devices being so kind of planned obsolescence, because the reason I was so interested is my iPad. I have the M2 Apple iPad. It has almost the exact same chip that's in my Mac Studio. It is an incredibly powerful machine. I can write my scripts on it. I can do minor like video stuff on it, and it can be a game console. I have a stand for it. I can play I could plug in a controller, like going from just like a PC, writing and doing work on it, and then plugging in my controller and playing games on it. Like, it's almost the perfect device for that. And I feel like, if nothing else, the device manufacturers like Apple need to rein this in a little bit so that they can continue to sell it based on that, because their argument for it being good at these things immediately falls apart when all of the good examples of it just keep disappearing.
It's like you had mentioned earlier. The industry needs leaders who understand game development, not just business trends. And it's probably very similar on the mobile side. And I think this is a perfect place to sort of end the show, going back to what we started with. We are probably on the verge, I hope, of this cool AA gaming renaissance where you're going to have more Expedition 33 things happening. And it's nice because it's been a long time and it's felt pretty dark. And I do believe we're coming into that next turn. A lot of growing pains, a lot of shifts. I have no idea on the mobile side, because let's face it, it's mobile.
Yeah.
But if you're having these conversations, there's probably a community also who are expressing the same stuff. And hopefully at some point it reaches the right person, or the right person is in charge to adjust and push us through this turbulent, kind of unfortunate side of the current live servicey digital only space.
It's kind of like the phrase that's often used when it comes to like editing films or writing or whatever, called kill your darlings, of like, we have a lot of attachment. Like, we have a vested interest in AAA and like existing status quo franchises surviving because we've grown up with them. We want Halo to be good. We want the next Mass Effect to be worth playing because we've loved them up to this point. We don't want to just not play them, but we're reaching a point where we kind of have to just swallow it and accept maybe we just let these things die so we can get the revolution through and have things to enjoy. And it sucks, but I think we can get there. And I think games like Expedition 33, we have to rein in the discourse so that games don't get dunked on over minor things and become major internet memes. Like, I just think about Forspoken. Forspoken was an incredibly like average, slightly above average game. That's fine. We need lots of those. We need so many of those to fill the game's market. And instead it got such dogpiled on over little things that the whole studio basically shut down, and we can't keep doing that.
It's what we talked about a lot on this show. We're big fans of play. Just go play games. Enjoy the game. Go play. The more you doom scroll, the more you watch, the more you participate on like sometimes those community discussions, the less fun gaming becomes. And you miss out on the whole point of the hobby itself, is just to like telling you what, gonna do it again, Ebos. Go try SSX3. Go try that game. It will put a smile on your face. And
I'm looking at my PS2 now.
Yeah, but just go play games. And our community here is fantastic. I want to say thanks to everybody who's been listening to the show since last November. This has been one of the most fun things to get to do. And I'm just super appreciative that we get to have these conversations. And thank you to you too, Epos, because this is like my favorite part of every month now, is getting to pick your brain, and you always open up so many new ideas and get me to think about stuff in ways that I never really have before.
No, I feel the same way. I think some of you who have listened to podcasts have kind of noticed the Lost Saves channel that I typically make for gaming stuff has been very slow lately. I've been very busy, but I've also been, when things get dramatic in the gaming industry, it's hard to want to talk about it anymore because it feels like the discourse is so rough. And this podcast is the one outlet where like, I know we're going to have fun and we're going to talk about the stuff that's actually worth talking about and not just argue over little details. So it is super important to me as well.
Right on. Well, with that said, everybody, check the links down below. Epos' channel for tech YouTube goodness and his Lost Saves channel for some gaming content goodness. And yeah, anything crazy coming up for you, Epos? Trips, big things planned, or is it just grind time? Because for me, it's just grind time.
Yeah, it's grind time. Like I said, I got a little bit of a time off kind of vacation coming in a month or so that I'm just light at the end of the tunnel waiting on so I can get my gaming back on and make some music and that kind of stuff.
Most excellent. Well, good luck to everybody. End of spring is fast approaching. Next time we'll be talking, it'll probably be pretty close to the start of summer for most people. So enjoy, get outside. Thanks for listening. Hope it's a great week, and we'll see you again on the next episode.
Bye.